This is a placeholder, an attempt to fetch the chapter from thelab.com as leave.convol 7fen695. Marvel, I can summon the League of Legends, chapter 161. Failed with the following error. Fetch of URL at www.com/apr/get. Failed due to a network error. Failed to fetch. Chapter 162. Uninvited guests arrive. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Noah was waiting to see who would step through the teleportation gate now that Loki was out of the picture. Before anyone could appear, several blue spheres of energy shot out of the gate and streaked toward them. The projectiles were blisteringly fast. Except for Noah, only Hawkeye, with his superhuman marksmanship and exceptional dynamic vision, noticed them. Even he couldn't move fast enough to intercept. Everyone else had their eyes fixed on the dazzling portal and didn't see the attack coming. If those shots had struck the crowd, Nick Fury and the rest would have taken massive casualties, maybe even been wiped out. But a wind wall rose from the ground and slammed into the incoming energy waves, severing whatever intent had been driving the assault. The blasts detonated the moment they hit the barrier. The resulting blue flames dissipated into the air and shredded the equipment positioned outside the wind wall. Had the attack not been stopped, none of the ordinary people on site would have survived. Hawkeye, unable to react fast enough though, he'd sensed the threat, reflexively shoved at Nick Fury's shoulders to tackle him out of the way. His hands had barely made contact when he saw the attack blocked and stopped mid-action. Nick Fury, surprised by the grip, startled and then stared at the barrier in astonishment. Everyone else snapped to alert. Black Widow and the field agents raised their weapons and trained them on the teleportation gate. No one knew exactly how the wind wall had appeared, but no one wanted to waste time wondering. Noah stood at the very front, the white longsword that had suddenly materialized in his hand, gleaming faintly. He hadn't expected whoever was on the other side to be so decisive, firing blind into the crowd. The backflow of energy should have warned them their assault had failed. After several more waves detonated against the wind wall, figures finally began to emerge through the gate. Two figures stepped out first, roughly human in size but unmistakably alien in appearance. A third followed, moving more timidly than the first two. As the third person crossed the threshold, the teleportation gate began to shrink, or rather, to lose its rigid form and devolve into unstable energy that pulled itself toward the ceiling. Everyone trained their attention on the newcomers. Nick Fury inched closer to the Tesseract, his mind working fast. These people might be here for it. The aliens were not human, so Fury tried to glean whatever he could from their physical traits. The three consisted of two who presented as male and one who was female. The first two carried long-handled weapons. The male held, in his other hand, a short staff weapon topped with an oval, blue-glowing crystal. Noah's battle armor display had been scanning the intruders the whole time, and the staff flashed red warning markers, the armor's sensors registering an immense energy signature contained within it. Noah already knew what that pulsing blue crystal was, the Mind Stone, one of the Infinity Stones. He also recognized the two who led the trio, Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, two of Thanos' lieutenants, the Black Order. In the movies there were four, but for now only these two had appeared. Noah had a vague memory of their on-screen performance. Corvus had wounded Vision in a sneak attack, and together with Proxima, had been overmatched by the Avengers. But movie clips and real life were different things. Reality didn't need to worry about special effects budgets. When Loki's imprisonment had been confirmed, Noah had wondered whether the Tesseract would still ferry beings across universes as it had in the original timeline, or whether his interference would halt that function. It seemed the Tesseract was still active, only the arrivals had changed. Instead of Loki, Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight had been teleported in, accompanied by another figure who looked like an afterthought. Noah focused. The third person was almost human in appearance, but with slightly pink skin. Fury took the initiative and stepped to the most forward position near the Tesseract. "Strangers," he said, voice low and controlled. "This is private property. State your purpose for entering without permission." Corvus and Proxima ignored him. It wasn't that they couldn't understand. Their suits carried universal translators that let them communicate with most races. They simply didn't care to waste words. Their eyes swept the room instead, assessing the threat level of everyone present. The pink-skinned individual, the Kree researcher who'd been in the Chitauri lab earlier, looked terrified. He'd been the one Corvus had requested to increase the teleportation gate's transport limit, the expendable face chosen to come along. He'd been pulled over against his will and hadn't been given a helmet. Though he wore Kree armor, he guessed it wouldn't protect his head from whatever these Earth weapons might do. He slunk behind Corvus, trying to stay out of sight in case violence erupted. To Corvus and Proxima, the humans' weapons looked primitive and their numbers insignificant. But the man in the battle armor at the front, Noah, felt different. Corvus tightened his grip on the staff holding the Mind Stone. Proxima mirrored his motion. They attacked in perfect sync. Corvus lunged, the staff's blue crystal flashing. Proxima drove forward with her long spear. Energy and motion collided in an instant as the two elite warriors moved to strike. Chapter 163, Conflict, the Power of the Mind. Stone Corvus Glaive struck first. He lunged toward the Tesseract, his golden glaive sweeping for Noah, the center of the threat. Corvus's fearsome reputation rested on that weapon, a double-bladed, razor-sharp glaive said to cut through even vibranium. In the movies, it had impaled vision. In front of Noah, it moved with a speed that felt almost supernatural. Noah met the attack calmly. He wrapped his sword, magic cut, in a layer of magic, and met the golden blade. The clash sent a shock through the air. Noah didn't know what material magic cut was made of, but after being forged by the system, its hardness was exceptional. He'd still rather avoid nicking the blade, so he fortified it with runes before striking. Corvus expected to clear Noah out of the way and rush the Tesseract. Instead, the armored figure didn't merely block, he poured a tremendous counterforce into the clash. Corvus gripped the glaive's long handle and tried to brace himself, but the force slammed the shaft into his chest and sent him flying backward. Proxima Midnight, rushing up behind him, reached out to catch him mid-fall. Thanks to Corvus's robust physique and the armor's absorption, he wasn't badly hurt. "This one's strong. Watch yourselves," she warned, steadying him. "I know," Corvus answered, rising to his feet. He'd noticed something different about the armored fighter. Before he could analyze it further, the other agents on scene reacted, guns up, firing. Bullets spat into the lab with practiced accuracy. Even without Hawkeye's legendary skill, trained shooters could pin targets. Corvus didn't flinch. He slammed the Mind Stone, held in his other hand, down onto the floor. A shockwave rolled outward from the blue crystal the instant it hit. Bullets that had been arcing toward them were deflected. Shards of concrete and equipment rattled, and everyone on the floor was shoved off their feet. Noah threw a wave of magic forward to blunt the blast. Most of the force dissipated, but a small, odd residue of energy remained. It hit like a mental jolt. Those struck felt their heads snap with a dizzying pressure and blinked out for a heartbeat. Noah felt it too, an odd, intrusive force against his mind, but his mental training let him recover in under a second. So that was the Mind Stone, he thought. That strange sting. It wasn't purely physical. Corvus had expected the brief deployment of the stone to buy him enough time for escape. He'd assumed his adversaries would be stunned longer. Seeing the armored man recover so quickly surprised him, but there was no time for surprise. If they lingered, they'd be trapped. He poured everything into a charge. The shockwave from the stone had pushed everyone back and left the device housing the Tesseract exposed and undefended. Corvus's speed accelerated. The Mind Stone in his hand shifted. What had been a short grip lengthened into a scepter, the blue crystal at its head flaring with energy. Noah saw the movement instinctively. He gathered terrifying magic along the blade of his sword and launched a slashing wind of force. The blade of wind raced across the lab, expanding and howling as it cut through equipment. Corvus didn't try to dodge. He intended to force the issue. He unleashed the Mind Stone's power and drove it toward the Tesseract fixed in its device. The energies of two Infinity Stones met in an instant, creating a violent reaction. The Tesseract flared to life. Before the wind blade could strike Corvus in midair, a surge of blue energy enveloped him, and then he was gone, taken with Proxima Midnight and a Kree researcher who'd been right behind them. The wind blade, finding no target, continued on its path and sliced through the lab's structure. It cut diagonally upward with unstoppable force, tearing a huge fissure open in the ceiling and exposing the sky above the base. Noah tracked the blade's path and confirmed, miraculously, no one in the line of fire had been injured. Fury had already ordered an evacuation. Many had been pulled out before the worst of it. Noah turned toward the empty pedestal. The device that had held the tesseract stood open and vacant. He rubbed at his helmet out of habit. He couldn't feel the tesseract in his head. He'd been careless. It was his first real encounter with an infinity stone, and its power had caught him off guard. If he'd anticipated the Mind Stone's mental bite, he could have prepared a defense and avoided that momentary vulnerability. Around him, the agents lay scattered, slowly coming to. Hawkeye and Black Widow stirred first, better physiques and training letting them recover sooner. Then the others, as Noah pulled a small bell from his backpack. "Michael's blessing," he said, and rang it. Ding, ding, a clear, pleasant chime echoed through the lab. The sound rippled through ears and minds alike. One by one, the dazed agents pushed themselves up. Fury scrambled to his feet and looked at the tesseract's empty housing, then at the giant breach in the ceiling. "What happened?" he demanded, eyes flicking to Noah. "No time to think," Noah said, shrugging and sheathing magic cut. "They escaped using the tesseract." Chapter 164. The Earth is about to be invaded? "Those aliens escaped using the tesseract's power," Noah said, shrugging as he slid his magic cut back into his backpack. Corvus Glaive had tapped the Mind Stone, activated the tesseract, and fled through its teleportation. "What? This is bad," Fury muttered, rubbing his still dizzy head. Having something as dangerous as the tesseract stolen by beings from outside the universe was grim news. Even worse, they didn't know the intruder's objective. Were they after the tesseract only, or were they planning an invasion of Earth? "Coulson, don't just stand there. Check the base for damage, see if anyone was hurt, and find out from Hill how the task I gave her is coming along," Fury snapped, straightening. The incident was over. Now they had to respond. With such a major breach in the tesseract gone, he also needed to notify his superiors. Fury touched his chest. The slightly protruding hard object gave him a small measure of comfort. "Earth has been attacked from beyond the universe again. Should I call her back?" he wondered, Captain Marvel's name unspoken, then abandoned the thought when he saw the huge crack running across the base. According to what Noah had said, those invaders hadn't been able to match him. They had fled. That knowledge brought Fury a shred of confidence. There was at least something to build on. This was also the perfect opening to push the plan he had long been brooding over, the Avengers Initiative. Fury had conceived it after his encounter with Captain Marvel, to gather everyone on Earth with extraordinary abilities into an elite force to counter threats from beyond. He'd proposed it to the World Security Council before, but they'd rejected the idea in favor of their Phase 2 plan, centered on the Tesseract. Phase 2 was still in development and couldn't be deployed immediately. Now, with the Tesseract gone, Fury felt the timing might finally be right. But first, the mess at hand. Most of the lab equipment was ruined. The Tesseract had vanished, and the ceiling had split so wide he could actually see the sky beyond. "I'm leaving now. I'll go look for the Tesseract," Noah said, striding up to Fury and then taking off through the breach. He was gone in an instant, leaving a loud sonic boom. "Wait, I still have questions for you." Fury called after him, but Noah was already gone. "Looks like I'll have to ask later," Fury said, shaking his head. He turned to the agents on the scene. Although they'd regained consciousness after that strange ringing, they were still groggy. "How's everyone doing?" he asked. "A bit off," Hawkeye replied. "Like the morning after a bender, dizzy and nauseous." "As an agent, Barton, you should always stay sober. You can get drunk when you retire," Fury shot back. "Fine, I was just making a comparison," Hawkeye shrugged. "All right, find Coulson, then head to Med to get something for dizziness. Wait for my orders after you gather." "Talos, come with me," Fury ordered. Talos had been silent since the three emerged from the portal. Fury wanted answers. "Talos, do you recognize those people? Who were they?" he asked. Talos was a Skrull who'd lived across the universe. He should know more than most. "The last one was a Kree," he said. The Kree were the Skrulls' mortal enemies, the ones who'd driven the Skrulls into their current plight. Fury had a vague memory of the Kree from stories. Carol had warned him they'd once even planned to bomb Earth. And the first two? Fury pressed when Talos hesitated. They looked like subordinates of the Mad Titan, Talos said finally. The mention of Thanos made his tone tighten. Everyone in the universe knew the Mad Titan's name. Mad Titan? Who's that? Fury admitted, unfamiliar with many cosmic affairs, though the epithet sounded ominous. Thanos, Talos said. He's the most feared being in the universe. Stories about him reach every planet. He leads legions against worlds with life and slaughters half of its population. No one knows why he does it. The two who came through earlier were Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, two of Thanos' top lieutenants. I don't understand why a Kree would be with them. Do the Kree have ties to Thanos? I always knew the Kree were trouble. Hearing that, Fury's stomach dropped. Goddamn. Do they want to invade Earth? He hissed. The Thanos Talos described was beyond anything Earth could handle alone. I don't know, Talos answered, uneasy. Maybe they only came for the Tesseract. I hope that's all. After all, our people live here too. Silence fell over the group. Fury let the threat sink in, then shook himself. Right. Priority 1 is to locate those invaders and recover the Tesseract. Then we figure out their purpose. If Thanos really intends to invade, we have to prepare. We won't just sit around and wait. Chapter 165. New tasks. I'll go first. I'll try to find the Tesseract's location. With that, Noah left the base. The way events were unfolding had already diverged from the movie he remembered. Loki had been replaced by Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, but they still took the Tesseract. The Mind Stone's influence in Corvus Glaive's hand had cost Noah a small loss, but this time nobody inside the base had been controlled by it. Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight aren't scientists. How are they going to build a teleportation portal to bring in the Chitauri? Noah wondered as he flew home. In the movie, Loki hadn't known how to construct such a device, so he used the Mind Stone to coerce Dr. Eric Selvig into building the equipment. Corvus and Proxima, from everything Noah had seen, weren't the type to invent machinery. They must have brought someone with them. There had been a pink-skinned extra with them in the scene. That person had to be the scientist, a spare perhaps, but not completely insignificant. Noah also had a task that convinced him Corvus and Proxima would stay on Earth to open a portal. He'd accepted a new mission after they'd escaped with the Space Stone. A-level task, guard Earth. A vast army eyes this universe. Enemies from beyond are plotting to open a teleportation portal to bring them through. Summoner, prevent them from opening the portal or defeat the invading army. Noah had opened the task panel earlier while observing the research base from above, before the Space Stone's portal had been activated. Back then, only a B-level task to obtain the Tesseract had shown up. He figured the A-level mission was a fixed assignment that triggered after encountering the Tesseract. It wasn't the one he'd wanted. He'd been hoping to refresh for a mission tied specifically to the Battle of New York, so he closed the panel temporarily. When the portal opened, the mission he hadn't wanted appeared, but now he had to accept it. There were two ways to complete this task: stop Corvus Glaive from opening the portal, or let them open it and then defeat the invading Chitauri. Noah chose the second. It would be harder, yes, but likely offered a bigger reward, and he wanted to study the Chitauri. In the movie, they'd seemed weak, but in reality, they were Thanos' main force. They should be different and worth investigating. I'll go back and find a way to locate them, he decided. He reached out, traced a teleportation portal, and stepped through. Buzz. A blue light cracked across an empty stretch of land, and 3 figures collapsed out of it. The Kree researcher hit the ground with a groan. Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight landed in a half-crouch nearby. The blue cube of the Tesseract tumbled and skidded across the soil. Corvus rose, walked over, and picked it up. The Tesseract is secured. Shall we return and report? Proxima scanned the barren terrain, glanced at the Kree still on the ground, then came to Corvus's side. No, Corvus said, cradling the cube. Our orders aren't just to take the Tesseract. We're to test this planet's strength. That was my Lord Thanos' command. Proxima's eyes flicked to the horizon. Then what now? That thing back there was strong. I don't know how many like it live here. The memory of almost dying made her uneasy. She hadn't expected such powerful beings on a world so small. The armor made it strong, Corvus replied. That technology isn't native to this planet. Our priority is to survey this world thoroughly, then open a portal to let the Chitauri legions in. He looked down at the Kree researcher still lying on the ground and sneered. Kree, if you don't get up now, you'll never get up again. The Kree had been trying to feign death, but Corvus had caught his faint movement and used the threat to make him move. He scrambled to his feet with an awkward, terrified smile, eyes fixed on the glowing cube. The Kree finally realized what they'd come for, a device capable of space transfer. If the Kree Empire had access to such power, but he cut that thought off. These were subordinates of the Mad Titan. He was a weak, expendable pawn, barely worth thinking about beyond survival. You, Corvus said, pinching the Kree's shoulder so hard the researcher flinched. I'm giving you a task. Fail, and you will die horribly. My lord, please tell me what you would have me do, the Kree stammered. The creak of his armor and the trembling in his voice made it clear he had no choice. You claimed touching the Tesseract could open a teleportation portal big enough for a Chitauri warship to pass through, Corvus said, raising the cube. It's in my hands now. You didn't lie to save yourself, did you? The Kree swallowed hard, the blue light reflecting off his lips. He had indeed said those words before, but back then he'd been trying to buy time. My lord, I would need equipment to assemble a portal generator. On our ship we had all the resources, but here... The Kree spread his hands helplessly. We don't have that equipment here. Corvus released his shoulder and looked around. The landscape was empty and desolate, strange, broken stone and no signs of habitation. If they wanted a functional survey and a portal built, they'd have to start by understanding the planet itself. Then we begin with reconnaissance, Corvus said at last, voice as cold as the light from the cube. Find whatever technology this world hides. Once we know what we're dealing with, we'll open the portal. Chapter 166. Brother Nee, me again? A single flickering lamp hung at the corner of a narrow alley, casting a weak, jaundiced light over peeling concrete and a tangle of debris, broken cardboard, shattered glass, and unidentifiable trash that had collected into a small, chaotic landfill. Places like this were the city's refuse, where trouble and trash mingled. A figure in a black robe strolled through, kicking a crushed soda can against the grimy wall. Ordinary people avoided alleys like this at any hour. Only those with bad motives or desperate needs came here. Hey, man, a voice called from behind. A few scruffy thugs with dreadlocks and cheap knives fell in around the robed stranger, cutting off his escape. Their easy, practiced movements showed they'd done this before. The leader, a wiry man with a blade, stepped forward and grinned. Since you wandered into our turf, you must have something to trade, he said, brandishing the knife and enjoying the fear he expected to see. The man in the black robe stayed silent and bowed his head. The thugs bristled at the insult, ready to teach him a lesson, but before they could act, the robed figure finally moved. He reached up and pulled back his hood. What the? The leader staggered back, nearly falling. The others recoiled. Under the hood was not a human face, but a wrinkled, purple visage, alien and terrible. It was Corvus Glaive, who had teleported from the desolate wilderness using the space stone and now stood in the city. You cosplay? The leader managed, recovering his voice and trying to laugh it off. He readied his knife and lunged. Corvus caught the man's wrist as the blade came down. There was a sickening crack. The knife clattered to the ground, and the thug's hand dangled uselessly. Ah! The man screamed as Corvus's grip crushed bone. Shut up! Corvus's voice was flat. He released the wrist and crossed the alley like a shadow, closing a hand at the man's throat. Another crisp sound snapped in the silence. The thug slumped, killed instantly. The remaining men froze, horror written across their faces. Panic broke them. First they trembled, then instinct took over and they fled. Corvus watched them run for a moment, then drew the short staff that housed the Mind Stone and aimed it at the retreating figures. 3 blue orbs of energy burst from the crystal and streaked after them. The orbs struck without warning. Before they could cry out, the fleeing bodies dissolved into scattering particles of blue light. One man, spared by chance, fell to his knees and begged, but Corvus had left him alive on purpose. He wanted answers. Corvus walked up, set the Mind Stone against the kneeling man's forehead, and a wash of energy flowed from the blue gem into his mind. The man's body went rigid, shuddered, and his terrified expression smoothed into a blank calm. When Corvus pulled the stone away, the thug rose and stood obediently. "My servant," Corvus said coldly, "tell me the quickest way to gather all the information about this planet." "The fastest way is the internet," the man replied in a flat voice. "Give me the device you use to access it." Corvus extended a hand. The thug produced a mobile phone, unlocked it without hesitation, and handed it over. Corvus cradled the small device in his gloved hands. He had what he needed. The rest would be for the Kree to handle. The thug, no longer useful, was nothing more than debris. A flicker of blue light emanated from the staff. The kneeling man dissolved into the same scattering particles as his comrades. Corvus replaced his hood, slipped the phone into his robe, and left the alley. He could not directly control the power of the Tesseract. He needed the Mind Stone to activate it, and even then, the teleportation was random. That was why he meant to build a device, a stable portal that Chitauri could use to come here. He needed specific equipment the Kree had identified, and he needed to assemble it without drawing more attention. He walked swiftly back to their temporary base, an abandoned subway station where they could work unseen. Chapter 167, Start Planning. "Kree, you have it. Hurry up." Corvus Glaive strode back into their temporary base and tossed the device he had taken from the Kree onto a nearby table. "What is this?" "A communicator from this planet." The Kree researcher took the device and began to study it. "This thing can access information on this planet. I'll find what we need," he said. "Yes, my lord." The device itself was simple to operate, but there was a problem: the language barrier. The Kree's translator could handle speech, but it couldn't reliably interpret written text. It wasn't a showstopper. He only needed to tweak the translator's parameters, and it would be able to translate what was on the device. After Corvus finished speaking, he exchanged a few words with Proxima Midnight, then took the Mind Stone and moved to a cleared patch of ground. He sat cross-legged and gripped the stone tightly. Focusing his consciousness into it, he felt a strange ripple pass through his body. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the subway station. He stood in a barren landscape of jagged, alien rock. There was no star to light the sky. The world was dim, lit only by faint, cold blue glows. His feet cast no shadow. His true body still lay on Earth. He was projecting his mind to a pre-established nexus. It was a small, clever use of the Mind Stone, a trick Loki had used long ago. "Corvus Glaive, how go things? Master awaits your news." In that bleak place, someone had been waiting. The figure wore a black robe, a metal mask, and a hood that hid the upper half of his face, the commander of the Chitauri. "The Tesseract is in my hands," Corvus reported. "Once I open the teleportation portal, we'll begin the invasion. I will make Lord Thanos' will manifest again in this universe." He looked to the Chitauri leader. "Prepare your army." "Do not worry. The Chitauri are already stirring." The leader replied, his voice slithering with menace. Corvus gave a brief update on their progress on Earth, then withdrew his consciousness. The projection collapsed. He was back in the subway station. At his side, the Kree researcher was speaking nervously to Proxima Midnight. Corvus rose and walked over. "My lord, I have a basic understanding of this planet now. Our current location is called Paris, France," the Kree said quickly, relaying what he had pulled from the device. Corvus's tone turned sharp. "Any information on that man in the armor who attacked us?" "The armored man is being called the Swift Wind Swordsman by the people here," the Kree replied. "His level of technology doesn't fit with this planet's general state, perhaps a genius ahead of his time." He also mentioned another being on Earth, Iron Man. Beyond those exceptions, the Kree summarized what he could about Earth's technological and military capabilities. For the most part, the planet was still in an era of hot weapons and conventional armies. "Find what you need. We must open the teleportation portal as soon as possible." Corvus knew that Earth's defenders were searching for them. The Chitauri needed to descend quickly to avoid being preempted. "But my lord," the Kree protested, "even with the right equipment, if it's only me, I can't complete this in any short time." When they had built a portal on the Chitauri battleship, it had taken many scientists several days. The portal Corvus required on Earth would be larger and demand far more computation. He couldn't do it alone. Corvus smiled, a cold little sound. There are plenty of hands here. The Mind Stone in his palm glowed faintly. After the Tesseract was lost, Nick Fury reported the matter to the World Security Council. Several council members were furious, but Fury explained that the Phase 2 plan had gone forward with their approval and that this was an inherent risk of studying an object like the Tesseract. After a series of terse assurances, the council agreed not to pursue S.Shield's responsibility for the lapse and told Fury to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. Fury knew how to deal with superiors. Once the council matter was handled, he turned to the invasion. He began to activate the Avengers initiative he'd planned long ago and sent invitations to his pre-selected candidates. In New York, Iron Man streaked towards Stark Tower from between the skyscrapers. While flying, Tony Stark kept Pepper Potts on speaker. She was on the top floor of the tower. "Are you sure you disconnected the tower's grid?" Pepper asked. "Of course," Tony said. Stark Tower is about to be a landmark for self-sufficient clean energy. His voice crackled with pride through his helmet. "If your arc reactor can take over the power supply and run smoothly," Pepper said, amusement in her tone. Through his faceplate display, Tony could see her smile. "It will. Light her up." As he spoke, the lights of Stark Tower began to come on, starting at the base where Tony had installed the massive new arc reactor and progressing upward until the Stark sign at the top flared to life. Tony touched down on the tower's balcony. Automated systems moved into action and began extracting the Mark VI armor from his frame. "Sir, Agent Coulson of S.Shield is calling," Jarvis announced as Tony headed for the balcony entrance. "Tell him I'm very busy," Tony said. Chapter 168, Avengers Assemble. "Tell him I'm very busy out here," Tony said offhandedly, instructing Jarvis to brush Coulson off. He had more important plans tonight, a date. Back in Stark Tower, Pepper was already waiting. When he walked in, she smiled. She'd chosen a white shirt and short jeans, a couple of buttons left open, adding a touch of provocative confidence. "The energy is stable. You succeeded," she said, barefoot at the table, watching the holographic projection of Stark Tower. "Of course I did," Tony replied with a confident grin. He stepped up behind her and murmured, half teasing, "Tell me, what does it feel like to be a genius?" "How could a mere mortal like me possibly understand?" Pepper shot back with a smile. They traded playful barbs, then moved out to the balcony lounge. Pepper pulled a bottle of champagne from the cabinet and poured 2 glasses. "Call your mom and tell her you'll be staying over tonight," Tony said with a grin. He didn't need to spell out the rest. Both of them knew the implication. Pepper laughed, shy but pleased, just about to answer when Jarvis interrupted. "Sir, you have an incoming call. My program has been, They were cut off by a firmer voice. "Stark, I have an urgent matter." Tony's smile faded. He recognized the voice immediately. He reached for his transparent phone on the table. Coulson had somehow patched straight into his feed. Tony waved a hand and joked, "I'm Tony Stark's living dummy. Please leave a message," which made Pepper laugh. "It's urgent," Coulson said evenly, not amused. "Then say it quickly." An elevator dinged. They both looked as the doors between the balcony and the service shaft slid open. Coulson stood there in the elevator, phone in hand, expression restrained. Tony looked flummoxed. Pepper stepped forward and welcomed him. "Phil, come on in," she said warmly. "Why are you being so friendly with him?" Tony muttered, following them, unable to help the grumpy comment. "Coulson, you've come at a good time. We're celebrating," Pepper offered. "I can't stay long," Coulson said. He smiled, but it was tight. S.Shield was stretched thin after the invasion. He handed Tony a slim laptop with S.Shield logo on it. "You need to look through these files, as soon as possible." Tony blinked at the device. I don't like people handing me things." "I like being handed things," Pepper said, handing her own champagne glass over to Coulson and taking the laptop from him. She passed the glass to Tony before setting the laptop in his hands. "My official consultation hours are Thursdays from 8 to 5, Tony quipped. "This isn't a consultation, Mr. Stark," Coulson said tersely. Tony carried the laptop to the table and connected it to his gear. Pepper hovered, watching. Coulson's face had a tightness to it that made her stop smiling. "You look serious," she said. "You should take this seriously." "How do you know that? And why do you call him Phil?" Tony asked, mock offended and a little jealous. Pepper only smiled and touched Tony's arm. Tony flicked the projection across the room. His systems pulled the laptop data into the holographic display. Files popped up, dossiers with the Avengers bios that Nick Fury had been assembling, and a separate folder labeled with references to the Tesseract. That energy signature, Pepper murmured, leaning in, and then she was suddenly whispering into Tony's ear. Tony's mouth fell open at whatever she'd said. Coulson fought to suppress a small, incredulous smile and looked away. Tony straightened and nodded. It's a deal. Have a safe trip. They kissed briefly. Pepper turned toward the elevator. I'll fly to the U.S. tomorrow, she said to Coulson as she left. If you're heading past LaGuardia, I'll take a ride with you. Coulson nodded. Be careful. Then he and Pepper left, the elevator doors closing behind them. Tony watched them go, then turned back to the projection. A red marker flashed in the center of a surveillance clip. He tapped it and hit play. The footage showed a laboratory, cameras up high, instruments everywhere. Nick Fury was on screen, standing by a glowing blue device. The device pulsed, then emitted a beam and opened something like a blue door, a teleport. A man named Noah appeared, followed by a burst of alien figures who spilled through and seized a glowing blue cube. Chaos erupted. Alarms blared. The footage showed the aliens scrambling back through the portal with the cube. Tony rubbed his chin as the clip ended. He reached out and cupped the holographic image of the cube, the Tesseract, in his hand, turning it over, studying the light that seemed to come from within it. What is this? He asked aloud. Chapter 169, Nick Fury's Invitation. After returning from the Tesseract research base, Noah threw himself into preparations for the coming war in his lab. Rows of project files labeled Not Yet Started filled his screen. These were ideas he'd planned but never had time to begin. Even with Heimerdinger's talent bonus, research didn't happen overnight. Noah had intended to recruit Dr. Banner to ease the load. Banner's smarts would be more useful than his raw strength for the work ahead. But Banner had only recently agreed to join him and was still officially on leave. Noah had once envisioned rolling out a Hextech army when the Chitauri invaded, Hextech beasts fighting off alien hordes. That plan had been derailed. The invasion had come sooner than his projects could. His Hextech Tyrannosaurus, for example, remained incomplete. Its parts sat ready in the cavernous laboratory beneath the island base that had been built for it. Noah sighed. Looks like the Tyrannosaurus will have to wait for another time, he said to himself. He moved on to assess the fighters he could count on. Beyond himself, the main combatants were Lysandra, Gwen, Banner, Warwick, and Mau Mau. He had a lot of confidence in Lysandra and Warwick. Mau Mau had proven himself formidable as well. Gwen's capabilities, however, were still an unknown. She'd been summoned, but not yet tested in battle. Banner's role was trickier to evaluate. Noah didn't know whether Banner would be willing to let the Hulk loose again, but for this operation he needed Banner's intellect more than his green alter ego. There was a specific task Noah wanted Banner to take on, locating the Tesseract. It had fallen to Banner to track it down in the original Avengers incident, and Noah wanted that expertise. He also set up a batch of nanorobots, commanded through Blitzcrank. If fighting broke out in densely populated areas, they would be indispensable for evacuations, crowd control, and civilian protection. As he was finalizing logistics, a notification popped up on his monitor. A message from Nick Fury. Noah opened it. Fury's letter was part invitation, part pitch, an offer to join the Avengers Initiative and a request to come aboard the S-Shield aircraft carrier the next day to help engage Corvus Glaive and other enemies from beyond. Fury mentioned he'd also invited Tony Stark, Captain America, and others. Noah read the persuasive paragraphs and the obligatory appeals to duty and cooperation. He scoffed quietly. Joining the Avengers would offer little immediate benefit and could compromise his independence, no small thing for someone who distrusted politicians and bureaucracy. He could, if he chose, form his own group, an alliance of his allies. The League of Legends, he mused with a wry smile. It felt oddly fitting. Toward the end of the message, he noticed an additional note addressed to Dr. Banner. When Noah had handed over those nine-headed serpent agents to Fury, he'd mentioned Banner was working with him. Fury must have sent a separate invitation for Banner through Noah. Perfect, Noah thought. He had something to talk to Banner about. He closed the message and opened a teleport portal to the island base. A flicker of blue expanded into a circular doorway and then winked out as he stepped through. The lab was bright and quiet. Banner sat at a terminal, absorbed in data. He looked up at the sound and smiled. "Evening, Noah." "Evening, Bruce," Noah replied. Their relationship had improved since Noah helped Banner resolve the leader situation. Banner had agreed to stay with Noah, and there was a new ease between them. "I read the materials you sent," Banner said as Noah came over. "I didn't expect there to actually be other life out there. I suspected we weren't alone, but seeing Corvus Glaive and the Tesseract, it's another thing entirely." Noah nodded. He'd forwarded Fury's files, surveillance, recovered footage, and the technical reports, and Banner had absorbed it all. Banner rubbed his temples. "The Tesseract is astonishing. I can't believe something like that exists." "Yeah," Noah said. He swiped the screen, pulling Fury's message into view. "Look at this. Fury's invited us to join the initiative. He's asking us to come to the carrier tomorrow to help deal with Corvus Glaive." Banner blinked at the letter. "A letter to me?" His expression flickered with something complex. Surprise, reluctance. Since his incident, he'd cut off a lot of old contacts. The sudden outreach from S.H.I.E.L.D. stirred up old memories. Noah watched him, deciding how to frame the next steps. The war was coming, and for all their disagreements, they would have to choose whether to step into the wider fight, and perhaps more importantly, whether to do it on their own terms. Chapter 170, Nick Fury, My Face is Dark Again. "My letter? Who would write to me?" Bruce Banner asked, puzzled. Noah only nodded toward the computer and motioned for him to read it. Banner clicked the email open. "S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Fury?" he said when he saw the signature. He remembered hearing the name before and had asked Noah about it once. "Yes, Director Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. is looking for you," Noah confirmed. Bruce scanned the message. His expression shifted as he read. "Director Fury wants me to join their operation. He says he needs my help finding the Tesseract, and he wants me to join the Avengers?" When he finished, he looked at Noah. The letter had laid out the situation in broad strokes. Earth was in danger if the Tesseract fell into the wrong hands, and Fury wanted Banner's intellect, carefully phrased so as not to mention the Hulk. Fury knew Banner was sensitive about that. Privately, of course, Fury valued the Hulk's strength too. Banner knew the Sky Carrier even had a specially built cell for the Hulk. Fury hoped Banner would join, but he was understandably wary. "Did he invite you too?" Banner asked, noticing Noah's name had been CC'd. "No," Noah said. "We can go check it out tomorrow, but I don't plan to join the Avengers." Banner shifted. He'd never liked official organizations, especially American ones. They reminded him of running from the government. "Do I have to go?" "No," Noah said, reading his friend's hesitation. "They wouldn't dare do anything, and we can also try to sort out that other issue for you." He glanced at Banner, knowing what was weighing on him, then paused. "Wait a second." Noah held up his hand and tapped a few keys. Fury's dark face flashed onto the screen. "Noah, is there something you want?" Fury's tone was clipped. "I told you, use normal channels if you want to reach me. Don't keep hacking my phone." Fury's scowl was genuine. He'd already complained about his tech team's security lapses. He'd ordered upgrades, and yet Noah had just breezed through. Fury wondered if some of the technicians were compromised. Hydra, maybe. He made a mental note to investigate later. Noah didn't seem bothered. "I read your letter. First, I refuse to join your Avengers. I don't need to avenge anything." "Avengers means standing for justice," Fury said, defensive. "It means protecting the innocent. It's not what you think." "I know." Noah only skipped past the Avengers part. "About the Tesseract, I'll come by tomorrow to take a look." Fury was silent for a beat, then, "Right, the location's in the letter." "Okay, I'll hang up if there's nothing else." Noah moved to end the call. "Wait, Noah." Fury's voice stopped him. He hadn't expected such a quick hang-up. "You didn't tell me Dr. Banner's response." Noah blinked. "Dr. Banner? Banner said he strongly resists official organizations and won't join you." Bruce, standing nearby, gaped and mouthed, "What?" Fury's confusion registered on his own face. Noah's flippant tone made him wonder if there was something more behind it. "What would make Dr. Banner agree?" Fury asked. "Can you ask him?" "No problem." Noah shrugged. "He already told me. Dr. Banner says General Ross keeps targeting him, and that's why he won't join. If you can make General Ross stop, he'll come tomorrow. Bruce stiffened. He hadn't expected Noah to bring the Ross issue up. He hated how Ross hunted him, but Ross was Betty's father. The thought of harming him made Bruce uneasy. General Ross is military, Fury said. I don't have authority over him. No, Director Fury, you're the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is a small thing for you. If you don't help, I'll have to take it into my own hands. Noah's voice was casual, but the implication sat heavy in the air. Fury's eyes narrowed. Take it into your own hands? What do you mean? Noah opened his mouth to answer, almost to say the word Skrull, but Fury cut him off. Fury's face darkened further. Talus had warned him he suspected Noah knew something about their identities. Fury didn't want to encourage that line of conversation, especially if anyone else was in the room. All right, Fury said, deciding. I'll see what I can do about General Ross. You and Dr. Banner come tomorrow. Don't be absent. He forced a tone of command into his voice, and without another word, Fury let the call drop. Noah closed the connection with a satisfied click. He'd seen Fury's face go progressively darker as the conversation ended. Do you think that will work? Bruce asked quietly once the screen went blank. No doubt, Noah said. Fury can move things if he wants to. Just know it'll probably happen after we handle the Tesseract issue. Bruce's tense features softened into something like hope. Noah grinned, and as if to lighten the mood, pulled up a photo and handed Bruce his phone. By the way, he said, here's a nice picture of Gwen. Chapter 171, Helicopter. Is S.H.I.E.L.D. built on the sea? Dr. Banner asked, staring out the window. He and Noah were alone in the Quinjet's cabin, watching the Atlantic fall away beneath them. After accepting Fury's invitation to the aircraft carrier, a S.H.I.E.L.D. Quinjet had arrived at Noah's manor the next day to pick them up. When it touched down on the helipad, Noah had already brought Banner over from the island base. He didn't want to risk exposing its location. There was only one pilot on the Quinjet, Hawkeye Barton. Unlike in the original timeline, he wasn't under the Mind Stone's control this time. Banner watched the scenery and nudged at his worry. To be honest, on a ship with limited range, with so many people around, I'm not sure it's a good idea for me to be there, he said, glancing back at Noah. If he lost control and turned into the Hulk here, people would have nowhere to go. Only Noah and Hawkeye could hear him. The plane held just the three of them. Hawkeye, in the pilot's seat, had seen footage of Banner's transformations. He knew the Hulk wasn't human so much as a monster. Could he handle that if it happened? Maybe. He had an arsenal of trick arrows and a fair bit of improvisation on his side. Don't worry too much, Banner, Noah said from across the cabin, scrolling his phone. Even if you turn into the Hulk, I can turn you back. Banner couldn't help smiling. Noah had restored him before with those uncanny methods. Thinking of it calmed him considerably. Then he glanced at Noah's casual clothes. Are you really planning to go in like that? Banner asked. He'd assumed the swift-wind swordsman's identity was covert, like Iron Man's, and that Noah was hiding it. No, Noah said. I'll suit up when we're close. He was interrupted by a dark speck appearing ahead in the sky. The Sky Carrier, the secret S.H.I.E.L.D. aerospace carrier, loomed into view. Noah tapped a transformation control, and in an instant, nano-armor unfolded around him. Banner had been looking out the window and didn't see it until he turned back and found Noah already in full battle armor. He started at the sudden change. Under Hawkeye's steady piloting, the Quinjet eased down and touched the carrier's deck. Soldiers patrolled, fighter jets were chained in place, and technicians fussed nearby. On the surface, it looked much like any aircraft carrier, only higher tech. As they stepped out, Noah kept his arms folded, the mask's scanners sweeping the deck and the carrier's structure. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s tech showed a lot of interesting design, things worth studying. Banner watched the other incoming Quinjet, guessing its passengers had received the same invitation. Two men climbed out. One was a tall, broad-shouldered blonde Banner recognized from files and museum photos. Captain America. Rogers and his companion, Cole, an enthusiastic fan who had insisted on coming along, saw Noah and Banner, who had arrived ahead of them, and walked over. Cole had volunteered for the mission just to be near Captain America and had brought a stack of rare collectible cards, hoping to get them all signed. Rogers had found it a little odd They'd done this once before, but agreed. Cole explained he hadn't been able to bring them all that time. These were limited editions he'd gathered painstakingly. Cole had already handed the cards to Rogers on the plane. They'd been sitting in his pocket waiting for time. "Hello, Dr. Banner and Mr. Swift Wind Swordsman," Rogers said, approaching. He'd reviewed the dossiers Fury had sent. He knew Banner's background and the dangerous brilliance behind his work, replicating and cracking the super soldier serum, the same serum that had transformed Rogers decades earlier. He also remembered the stories of Banner's other form. "Hello, Captain," Banner replied, holding out his hand. "You don't have to call me that," Rogers said with a small smile as he shook it. "Just call me Rogers." Noah offered his own hand. "Call me Yi," he said. "Okay," Rogers agreed. Cole grinned and stepped forward. "I'm glad you could make it, Yi." "No way I'd miss something like this," Noah replied. They exchanged a few more pleasantries. Hawkeye, having finished his checks, climbed down from the Quinjet and announced, "All right, chat time's over. Let's get inside. It's about to get hard to breathe out here." Before Banner and Rogers could ask what he meant, the carrier rumbled. People hurried for the interior, and the deck shuddered beneath their feet. Banner and Rogers moved to the edge to see what was happening. Around the bow and stern, the ocean churned into huge vortices. 4 massive propellers rose from the water, their blades slicing the air and flinging spray and wind across the deck. The force of the rotors kicked up gusts that hit them full on. "Oh no," Banner said, pressing a hand to his face against the blast. "I think the air's worse than the sea." Chapter 172, Entering the Cabin. After the Sky Carrier deployed its 4 thrusters, Noah and the others moved into the ship's cabin. As the carrier climbed, the flight deck emptied. Every fighter was lashed down by crewmen so the wind from ascent wouldn't tear them loose. Following Hawkeye and Coulson, the group made their way to the bridge. Fury stood with his back to them. In front of him, rows of S-Shield technicians manned their stations with serious, focused faces. This was the Sky Carrier's first real combat deployment, and there was no room for mistakes. Fury rested his hands on the side consoles, sensing their approach, and turned. Captain America walked over, stopped beside Fury, fished a $10 bill from his wallet, and handed it to him. Fury took the bill, slid it into the inner pocket of his black trench coat, and then looked at Banner and Noah, who still wore his battlesuit. "Dr. Banner," Fury said, stepping forward and extending his hand. "I believe this is our first meeting." "Hello." Banner shook his hand. "We desperately need your help finding the Tesseract," Fury said, locking eyes with him. "All right, I'll do what I can," Banner replied. He understood the gravity. Those aliens weren't tourists. Fury folded his arms and eyed Noah with a helpless expression. Noah, feeling the stare, shrugged awkwardly. "What? Don't look at me like that. I'm a scientist too," he said. Fury sighed and rubbed his forehead. He'd deal with the scroll matter later. For now, Banner's presence meant they could move on the Tesseract search. "Dr. Banner, I want you to start looking right away." Banner, who had meant to peer over the bridge like Rogers had, glanced at Noah, then asked, "How far have you gotten?" Fury looked down at Coulson and signaled for him to give a status report. "We're scanning every camera, phone, and laptop we can reach worldwide. Anything connected to a satellite is our eyes and ears," Coulson said. "That's still too slow," Natasha said, watching a progress bar crawl across a monitor. On an Earth this vast, finding a few unregistered people was like searching for needles in a haystack, if the needles were even still on Earth. "We need to narrow the scope," Banner said. He'd realized immediately how inefficient their current plan was. "How many spectrometers can you mobilize? As many as you need." Fury replied. S-Shield's authority, likely boosted by the World Security Council's concern, meant they could access a lot of hardware. "Contact every lab you can," Banner said, taking off his jacket. "Tell them to mount spectrometers on their roofs, calibrate them to look for gamma signatures, and I'll write a tracking algorithm based on cluster identification. That'll let us at least rule out large regions." Fury listened, impressed even if he didn't fully follow all the technicalities. "Can you get me a workspace?" Banner asked. "Agent Romanoff, take Dr. Banner to the lab," Fury ordered. "It's fully equipped. He'll want to get started." Natasha smiled and led Banner away, leaving a lingering scent of perfume that made Banner's nose twitch. He remembered he had a girlfriend and smothered any stray thoughts. He nodded at Noah and followed Natasha into the lab. Noah suddenly raised his hand. "I want to join the research team." Fury looked surprised. "You?" he said. "Yeah, I'm a scientist too." Noah pushed forward before Fury could argue. Fury had always thought Noah better suited to field work, but with Noah insisting on joining the lab, there was no point blocking him. With both Banner and Noah on the problem, Fury felt more confident about finding the Tesseract. "What do we do now?" Coulson asked, stepping beside Fury. Outside the bridge windows, the sky carrier had climbed to near the troposphere. Thick clouds rolled past. "First, follow Banner's plan. Notify every lab, get those spectrometers up, and then we wait for results," Fury said, returning to his station and staring out at the clouds. "Oh, and have you notified Stark?" "Yes, he's been told, but he's tied up and needs time to get here." In the carrier's laboratory, Banner followed Natasha. The lab was well stocked, though Banner thought it still didn't match the island lab Noah had built for him. Natasha set him up at a workbench. "This will be your workspace. Hope you can get comfortable." "I adapt quickly," Banner said. Natasha smiled and left him to it, heading back to the bridge to help coordinate. As the lab door opened again, Banner turned and saw Noah walk in. Chapter 173, The Guests Are Coming. "Oh, you're here." Black Widow had just left the lab when the door opened again. Banner turned and saw Noah enter. Noah looked the lab over and shook his head. This place was much cruder than their own. "How about it? Agent Romanoff is beautiful, right?" Noah asked Banner. In the original timeline, Noah remembered, after Banner and Betty split, he'd seemed to fall for Black Widow. "Miss Romanoff is very beautiful, but I already have a girlfriend, Noah." Banner smiled and pulled a hanging display closer. He and Betty were doing well. He wasn't going to waver over this. "No worries, sweet relationship. But your future father-in-law is definitely not a fan of yours." Noah moved to a nearby console to begin searching for the Tesseract with Banner, and he set Lysandra to do a full scan of this sky carrier to pull its schematics and systems data. "It's worse than not being a fan," Banner said with a helpless half-smile. "He wants to kill me." He still hoped Director Fury could talk to General Ross and get him to drop his obsession with harnessing the Hulk's power. Only if Ross let that go might Banner have a real chance with Betty. "Let's see if Nick Fury can help you this time," Noah said. "If not, we can always hypnotize him or make him disappear." He smirked, half joking. "Do League heroes have mind control magic? LeBlanc might. If I can summon her later, I could try. Hypnosis? Disappear?" Banner frowned. Would doing something like that to Betty's father ever be right? Noah was about to elaborate when he suddenly froze. He felt a powerful presence approaching, like the energy of the Bifrost. Thor? Why would he be here? Loki wasn't supposed to have been recruited by Thanos this time, Noah thought, puzzling. Banner noticed Noah staring at the console and became concerned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "Well, we have a new guest." Noah pushed the screen aside and left the lab, heading for the bridge. No sooner had Noah left than the ship vibrated beneath Banner's feet. The instruments jittered. It felt like the whole sky carrier was shuddering. "Is this a crash?" Banner's heart rate spiked, and he hurried after Noah. On the bridge, Nick Fury's brow was knotted as red warning icons flashed across the displays. He barked, "Can anyone tell me what's happening?" "Coulson, report." "Director, the sky carrier's been struck. Impact on the flight deck." Coulson read the incoming report and relayed it. "Show me the deck footage now," Fury demanded. "An attack on the deck? Foes? Aliens?" A feed flickered up. The footage showed a multicolored beam striking the deck. When it dissipated, two figures stood where it had landed. A broad-shouldered man with golden hair and armor and a red cape, Thor, and beside him a dark-haired man in green and gold leather. Fury noticed a heavy-looking cuff on one wrist of the black-haired man. "Coulson, cancel the alert," Fury said after studying the clip. "Looks like guests." "Got it, Director." Coulson recognized the Prince of Asgard. "Oh, Director, Stark just pinged saying he's on his way." "On his way?" Fury looked again. Another screen showed a streak of light descending, Iron Man, heading straight for the carrier. Tony had seen the beam and knew what it meant, so he throttled up and flew in at full boost. Tony landed on the deck, flipping up his faceplate. "Hey, Point Break," he called to Thor from a distance. He wasn't wearing the destroyer armor. Tony saved that draining suit for dire emergencies. Tonight, he wore Mark V6. Thor squinted at the nickname. Point Break? He said. He still remembered Tony from the last time, the mortal who'd fought the destroyer with him. Tony grinned. Kidding. I remember your name, Thor. And this one. He nodded at the dark-haired man. Who's he? Loki tossed his hair back, offering a sly, showy smile. Mortal, before you stands Prince of Asgard, Loki. He spoke in a high, theatrical tone. Before Loki could finish, the cuff on his wrist sparked and sent a shock through him. He convulsed and cursed. Thor gave an awkward half-smile and said, This is my brother, Loki. Oh, this Loki sent that big guy down last time to try and kill you? Tony asked, surprised. Yes, Thor replied. My father imprisoned him when I left. I brought him out again to make amends. Make amends for his crimes? Tony repeated, eyebrows raised. Before another word could be exchanged, Coulson stepped out of a nearby cabin wearing an oxygen mask and called up. Hey, gentlemen, could you come inside and keep it down? We need to talk. Hey, gentlemen, would you mind coming inside to discuss this? Coulson stepped out of the cabin, an oxygen mask covering his face. The sky carrier had stabilized. There was no more dangerous swaying that would fling someone off the deck, but at that altitude, the air was thin, and an oxygen mask was required the moment you stepped outside. Oh, someone's here to escort us. Thor, let's go inside. Also, what does atone for one's sins by rendering meritorious service mean? Tony called to Thor as he saw Coulson. Okay, Rakan, come on. Thor called to Rakan, who had stopped trembling, and led the way toward Coulson and the cabin entrance. Rakan shot Tony a glare as he passed. Humph, mortal. I'll remember you. He left the remark hanging and walked after Thor. Odin had enchanted the handcuffs on Rakan's wrist so that if he strayed beyond a certain distance from Thor, they would send a current through him. Any time they sparked, he would tremble all over. He'd already made a fool of himself once and had no desire to do it again. Tony watched Rakan go with a puzzled look. He hadn't electrocuted him, so why the grudge? He tossed the thought aside and followed Coulson onto the bridge. Good to see you again, Mr. Thor, Coulson said with a smile. Thor hesitated. I remember you. You are. He couldn't quite recall the name. Coulson, Coulson supplied, unbothered by the stumble. Oh, Coulson, yes. Please don't call me Mr. That's not how we do things in Asgard. Call me Thor. He clapped Coulson reassuringly on the shoulder. All right, Thor, Stark, this gentleman, please follow me. Coulson ushered them into the cabin. He didn't know Rakan, but if Thor brought him along it was fine, so he led them to the bridge. Your ship is quite impressive. I didn't expect Earthlings to build something like this yet, Thor said, looking around. At the center of the bridge, Nick Fury, wearing his black trench coat, and Noah, in his battle armor, were already waiting. Hey, Noah, long time no see. Thor's voice carried across the room as he called out the name without hesitation. He had a blunt, direct way of doing things. Almost everyone on the bridge heard him, and several faces shifted just slightly at the sound. Noah lifted an eyebrow. His true name had been exposed, but names weren't rare. There were a lot of Noahs in the world, so it didn't bother him. He noticed Sitwell, the bald, spectacled Hydra agent, among the S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel, but Hydra's days were numbered in his mind. After the Tesseract incident, Noah planned to start dismantling the organization. For now, the revelation of his name was nothing to lose sleep over. Thor, Noah replied simply. They hadn't been apart long. Thor had been cast down to Midgard by Odin and then had recently regained his power. Less than a month had passed. But in that time, both had been busy. Thor had been deepening his connection with Jane Foster, and Noah had been occupied with his own missions. Unlike the original course of events, Rakan had not used the Bifrost to devastate Jotunheim. Although Rakan had once tried to, Thor had stopped him. In the old timeline that had sparked rebellions across the 9 realms, but because Noah had altered the events, the Bifrost remained intact, and Thor had far more free time. He'd been using it, often, to visit Earth and see Jane. Thor's mother, Frigga, was delighted. Her once impetuous son had grown, and she urged him to bring Jane to Asgard to deepen their bond. Odin, however, was furious. He had intended Thor's exile and trials on Midgard to teach responsibility and prepare him to inherit the throne. What he hadn't planned for was Thor falling in love with a mortal, and when he returned, spending every free moment on Earth courting her. I will not give up my love for a woman, Thor had declared more than once, much to Odin's dismay. In the end, Thor completed his tasks and governed responsibly, motivated in part by the mortal he loved, so Odin begrudgingly let him continue. Back on the carrier, Noah's gaze flicked to Rakan. Thor, why are you here? And why did you bring your brother? Isn't he supposed to be in Asgard's prison? My father sent us down to assist you in guarding Midgard, Thor replied. Rakan was meant to be in prison, yes, but father has ordered that he serve alongside me. It is his punishment. He must atone for his sins by rendering meritorious service. Chapter 175. Gathered together, Nick Fury, who had been listening from the edge of the group, finally stepped forward. Captain Steve Rogers leaned against the railing behind him, watching quietly. He didn't know these others and preferred to observe. Fury approached Thor and extended his hand. Director Nick Fury, S-Shield, he said. Thor glanced at the outstretched hand and took it. The sight of the black-suited, one-eyed man gave him the impression that Fury was no ordinary mortal, cunning and dangerous in his own way. You said your father, King Odin, sent you to protect Midgard, Fury began. How did you know Midgard was in danger, and who's the enemy? Heimdall reported it to my father yesterday, Thor replied. He saw a Chitauri fleet watching Midgard from somewhere in the cosmos, so father sent us. Though, between you and me, I think Noah is more than enough to deal with mere Chitauri. Everyone turned to look at Noah at that. Thor's high opinion of him clearly surprised them. Noah waved awkwardly, silently telling Thor to go on. The compliment was appreciated, however much he might protest it. Fury took mental notes as Thor spoke. Heimdall, a Chitauri fleet, and the Tesseract's involvement. Fury had read about Heimdall in Norse myth, the warden of the Bifrost with all-seeing eyes, but he'd never heard of the Chitauri. That might explain the hole in S-Shield's scans. They had swept the space near Earth and found nothing. If Thor was right, and the Tesseract had been used as a portal before, could someone try to use it again to bring the Chitauri here? Where is this Chitauri fleet? Fury asked. It was the key question. If they knew where the enemy was, they could prepare. Heimdall only sensed the Tesseract's energy fluctuation, then turned his sight that way and saw the fleet, Thor said. But it's very far, a place he rarely watches. Heimdall can see across the 9 realms, but he doesn't watch the entire universe. This place is beyond his usual patrol, so he couldn't pinpoint its exact location. The universe was vast, and even Heimdall's vision had limits. Fury weighed that carefully. By the way, Thor added, almost casually, you may not know what the Tesseract is. It's a treasure my father left on Midgard after he drove the frost giants out. He stored it there. The Tesseract was left on Earth by Asgard? Fury's surprise was clear. S-Shield had taken the Tesseract from Hydra. Their records placed its discovery somewhere in Norway. If Odin had placed it on Midgard, that fit, but it raised more questions about why it had been there. As Thor finished, the scene shifted, tension and curiosity giving way to new arrivals. What's going on? Are you guys having a party here? Tony Stark called as he arrived, having taken off his Iron Man suit. He looked in, grinning, and hurried to the group. From the lab, Bruce Banner emerged with Dr. Eric Shawage. Banner had been about to follow Noah out when he ran into an old friend. Shawage's surprise was genuine. After years of Bruce's disappearance, he had finally found him. Banner was equally taken aback. They exchanged awkward, relieved greetings. Shawagi had been asking about Banner for some time. S-Shield had warned him off when he dug too deeply, classifying the information. But now, they met face to face. If there's a time, you'll understand why I disappeared, Banner had told him long ago. For now, they lingered in the corridor before coming onto the bridge together. Thor? Shawagi's face brightened at seeing a familiar presence. Shawagi, my good friend, Thor said, clapping him on the shoulder. I didn't find Jane. Are you here instead? Yes, I'm working with S-Shield now. Shawagi returned the greeting. Why are you here? To help, Thor replied. Tony, already noticing Banner, stepped forward with his usual electric enthusiasm. Dr. Banner, good to see you. Hello, Stark, Banner said, calm as ever. Your work with positron collisions is impressive. I'm also grateful for your transformation into a big green monster, Tony added, miming a Hulk pose with a grin that made Banner blush. Noah, having observed the arrivals, finally addressed the matter at hand. Thor, you still haven't said why you brought Rakan here. He nodded toward the figure at Thor's side. Rakan, who watched the mortals with obvious disdain. Fury's expression hardened. Lord Thor, as I understand it, your brother Rakan was responsible for the last destruction of a town. Why would you bring such a dangerous individual to Earth? Chapter 176, Happy Soul. Mr. Thor, as far as I know, your brother Loki was the mastermind behind the town's destruction last time. Why would you bring such a dangerous into Earth? Nick Fury demanded, staring at Loki, who was wearing that infuriating, threatening smile. Don't worry, Thor replied with an easy grin. Loki isn't here to cause trouble this time. He usually enjoys mischief and pranks, yes, but he won't have the chance now. He lifted Mjolnir, and small electric sparks danced along its surface. Loki's smile faltered. Thor, I warn you, Loki began, but a crackling sound cut him off. A device on his wrist discharged, and he convulsed where he stood. This thing is brilliant, Tony said, drawn by the commotion. Banner looked up as well. See? Rest assured, Loki's here to help, Thor said, almost boyish in his delight. Ever since their father had given him the controls for the shock cuffs, Thor had treated it like a new toy and seized every opportunity to use them on Loki. Aren't you supposed to be brothers? Banner asked, half amused. Thor's grin didn't look staged. Of course, no problem at all. Loki's done far worse to me. Thor waved his hand and launched into a story. When I was young, I liked snakes. Loki turned himself into one. I went to pick it up, and then he changed back and said, "Surprise, it's me," and pulled out a dagger and stabbed me in the stomach. He mimed the scene as if reenacting it. It was an embarrassing memory, but seeing Loki being zapped now gave Thor a vengeful sort of satisfaction. The sight of the two god brothers, one gleefully tormenting the other, left the assembled agents and scientists a little speechless. The image of legendary Norse gods was, for the moment, replaced with something far more domestic, two squabbling siblings. All right, I think I've got the picture, Fury said, rubbing his forehead. Thank you, Mr. Thor, for coming down to help. He turned to the room. Everyone, return to your posts. We need to find them before the enemy uses the Tesseract to open a portal and brings in an alien fleet of unknown size. Tony, you and Dr. Banner, along with Noah and Dr. Selvig, see what you can find. I want good news. Of course, super genius, super genius, super genius, Tony said, pointing at himself and Banner. He hesitated, then added, and plus an ordinary genius, meaning Noah, and gestured toward Dr. Selvig. We'll find that Tesseract quickly. Hey, Dr. Selvig protested. Oh, don't be offended, Dr. Selvig. I'll throw you a fantastic party after this is over, Tony promised, clapping Banner and Selvig on the shoulders. A party? Count me in. I haven't been to any of your Midgard festivities, Thor declared, abandoning his stupid grin. No problem, you're in. Fury watched the group with a twitching eyebrow. He noted Tony shepherding the scientists toward the lab, while Noah quietly took photos. This was the first gathering of the original Avengers and had historical value, in Noah's mind at least. The four scientists left the carrier together. With their expertise, Fury hoped they'd track down Corvus Glaive fast. Fury sent Agent Coulson to escort Thor and Loki to the Sky Carrier's reception lounge. As they moved off, Captain America walked over to Fury. Rogers had been watching from the side. His presence steadied Fury. How are the lab notifications coming along? Rogers asked. We've sent alerts to research institutes worldwide. Responses should be coming in, Fury answered, and then called over to Agent Hill. Agent Hill? Situation? All notifications were sent, Hill replied, pulling up a screen. Many institutes have already responded. Only a few have not. Her brow tightened as she scanned the data. Several institutes in Paris haven't replied. They haven't even checked our messages. Director, something's off. Try to contact the directors at those institutes, Fury ordered. Hill worked the console a moment, then looked back up. There's no way to reach them. Fury's jaw tightened. A whole cluster of research institutes in Paris suddenly going dark was not a coincidence. Could something have happened? Rogers asked. Send people from the France branch to check those sites, Fury said, and keep a constant channel open with us. In Paris, assailed agents from the French branch arrived at a remote research facility after receiving orders from headquarters. It sat well away from public areas, the kind of location used for classified projects. We've crossed the outer perimeter and are ready to enter, the lead agent reported. Several fully armed operatives reached the gate. One produced a small device and attached it to the locked door to override the passcode. Each agent wore a miniature camera on a shoulder strap to stream footage back to the sky carrier. "Prepare to breach," the lead said. They opened the gate and moved inside. Back on the carrier, Fury and the team watched the live feed. When the agents stepped into the facility, what they found froze everyone watching into silence. Chapter 177, Stolen Research Institute. When the S-Shield agents entered the research institute that had lost contact, what met them on the inside knocked the wind out of them. They had expected a ruined lab and dead researchers. Instead, the building was empty. There were no bodies, not a single staff member, and most of the equipment had vanished, as if the place had been ransacked. Yet there were no signs of a violent struggle, no overturned furniture, no scorch marks. It was the absence of evidence that unnerved them most. On the bridge of the sky carrier, Fury and a handful of others watched the live feeds from the agents' cameras. The teams had split up after entry, each operative filming his search. After sweeping the facility, they had found nothing, no personnel and almost all apparatus missing. "What happened here? Where did the people go?" Rogers asked, watching the screen with a frown. "We don't know yet," Fury said, arms folded, eyes fixed on the footage. "We'll have a better idea once the teams finish their sweep." "What about the other research sites?" he asked Hill. Hill brought up feeds from the branch teams. The scenes from the other institutes were the same as the first. Empty facilities, vanished staff, and almost all research materials removed. "Surveillance inside the institutes has been disrupted by something unknown," she reported. "We can try to recover the footage after our techs repair the systems. Cameras outside show nothing unusual, no convoys, no trucks. It's like everything walked out on its own." Fury's jaw tightened. He had an ugly hunch. The God's Cube, the Tesseract, could open spatial portals. If their enemy was using it for teleportation, these labs could have been emptied without a trace. "Coulson, get Tony and the others on this," Fury said. "Tell them the enemy might be in Paris and ask if they can pinpoint the location." Coulson, who had just escorted Thor and his brother to a holding area, nodded and turned toward the lab. "Right away," he said, though a twitch at the corner of his mouth betrayed his disbelief. He strode off. In the lab, 4 members of the scientific team watched the same live feeds. Noah had hacked into S-Shield's relay and was piping the carrier's images directly to their wall screen. Tony Stark rubbed his jaw, incredulous. "They all just disappeared? Not even a trace?" "No," Noah said flatly. "They were teleported. The Tesseract can do spatial teleportation." He had already dug back into footage from the battlefield where Corvus Glaive's team had come through. Corvus and his team hit Paris first. They hit several research institutes to gather parts to build a stable teleportation gateway. The missing staff were probably taken too. Banner, tapping a thin, electrified rod on the table until it squealed, added, "The Tesseract was in Asgard." Shawega frowned. "Why take the researchers and the equipment? What are they missing?" Noah brought up a recording taken by his armor, first-person footage of Corvus Glaive and his cadre emerging from a tier in space. "The portal that brought them to Earth before collapsed shortly after creation," he said, pausing the clip on the image of the failing gateway. "This time, they want a stable portal, something that can bring an entire army across. They need a stabilizer for the portal," Shawegi said. "Iridium would work, and they need a power source powerful enough to channel the Tesseract." Tony's eyes lit up at the second requirement. "Like an arc reactor," he muttered. But the missing equipment was all in Paris, unlikely to have been carried back to New York. Noah pulled up a news alert on the screen. A Parisian research institute had been cleared out by unknown assailants. All staff inside had vanished, and almost everything of value was gone. The reporter covering it had been a late-arriving employee who'd found the building nearly empty that morning. On the recovered inventory list, the stolen items included iridium. "They've almost got everything they need," Noah said. He was about to continue when the lab door opened and Coulson stepped in. Coulson stopped short, staring at the footage on the wall, evidence that Noah had already hacked into their system again. "You don't need me to spell this out," Coulson said with a shrug. Director wants you to find their location as soon as possible. Noah glanced at the mission board, still unupdated, and then at the three others in the room. Then let's get moving. Far below the surface of Paris, in an abandoned subway station, the stolen equipment lay neatly arranged on the tiled floor. The station was alive with activity. Researchers in white lab coats clustered around workbenches, strings of diagnostic gear, and crate upon crate of components. Their movements were efficient, almost mechanical. The most unsettling thing was their eyes. The pupils of every researcher glowed a pale, eerie blue, as if lit from within. Chapter 178. The device is about to be completed. How long until you can get a stable teleportation gate online? In an abandoned Paris subway station, Corvus Glaive watched the Kree researcher before him. What had once been a hollow, desolate platform was now a makeshift laboratory. Walls scored with modifications, tables crowded with instruments, and teams of technicians in white coats bent over consoles and devices. "My lord, it's almost done," the Kree said. "We're one step away from bringing the Tesseract online and opening a stable teleportation gate." The researcher understood exactly what he was helping. He was aiding a lieutenant of the Mad Titan to invade a planet. The Kree had carried out conquests before, but since the destruction of their supreme intelligence, their empire had been in decline. Survival had become a daily struggle. Expansion was a luxury. Then, when the researcher examined the phone Corvus had brought back, he discovered the truth that chilled him. This planet was the homeworld of the woman who had destroyed the supreme intelligence. Captain Marvel had wiped out the supreme intelligence and left their world without sun, water, or breathable air. Among the Kree, she had acquired a new name, the Annihilator. At first, the researcher had trembled at the thought. That image of destruction would not leave him. If the Annihilator returned here, they would all be doomed. But then he reminded himself, he was working for the Mad Titan, and the Mad Titan was not afraid of that woman. Thoughts of revenge for his ruined people hardened him. If the Annihilator had leveled the Kree's home, why should he hesitate to help bring retribution? "What's still missing?" Corvus asked. Corvus had scoured the planet's networks to locate suitable equipment and facilities, then, using the Tesseract backed by the Mind Stone, had taken control of key personnel and emptied several research institutes. Corvus himself could not fully master the Tesseract for precise spatial transfers. The Mind Stone, in his grasp, compensated for that weakness. After looting the first lab, the Kree researcher had used the stolen gear to build a rudimentary teleportation gate, allowing Corvus to make accurate jumps between the labs and the subway platform. Now they were close to the real objective. "We have the gate stabilizer," the Kree replied. "All that's left is the energy to power the Tesseract." Originally coerced into coming to Earth, the researcher's attitude had changed once he learned this was Captain Marvel's world. He spoke with a new fervor. "We can finish the teleportation gate any time. Once the Tesseract is energized, the gate can be opened immediately." "Good. Have you located a power source?" Corvus's long nails tapped the console impatiently. "There are several possible sources. The most suitable is here." The Kree pulled up a tablet and showed an image of Stark Tower. He highlighted the massive arc reactor deep within its lower levels. "This building contains the kind of energy we need. This Stark, he's talented to achieve this on such a primitive planet, but—" "Is there a problem?" Corvus asked, sensing hesitation. "This tower sits in a city called New York," the Kree said. "That's where the Swift-Wind Swordsman is usually active. It might be his base." Corvus considered the name. That human in powered armor had already proven dangerous. Confronting him would complicate matters. Corvus had commands to survey Earth, a planet still largely in the era of firearms and conventional armies. If that were all, the Chitauri fleet could crush it. But the appearance of figures like the Swift-Wind Swordsman and others meant Earth was not to be underestimated. Their first priority, however, was to teleport the Chitauri fleet and gauge the planet's true defenses. "Prepare everything," Corvus ordered, pointing at Stark Tower on the screen. "Make sure the teleportation gate can open at maximum speed, recalibrate the device, and set Stark Tower as the destination." "My lord, what if the Swift-Wind Swordsman or Iron Man tries to stop us?" the Kree asked. "When we teleport in, You open the gate as fast as possible. The rest will be handled by the Chitauri. I want to see whether the swift-wind swordsman can withstand a full fleet, Corvus said, voice like a blade. Yes, my lord, the Cree replied, a strange excitement in his tone. Perhaps revenge was intoxicating. The researcher hurried back to the controlled scientists and technicians, urging them to speed up. He recalibrated the teleporter and locked the precise coordinates to the interior of Stark Tower. Corvus watched the flurry of activity for a moment, then left to find Proxima Midnight and discuss the battle plan. Are you sure they'll stay in Paris long enough for us to find them? Tony asked in the Sky Carrier's lab, watching the tracking data. It's better than doing nothing, Banner replied, adjusting the machine tracking the Tesseract. Paris is the most likely place right now. No offense, Tony, but you should worry about your own tower. Stark Tower just installed a massive arc reactor. They could go after it, Noah said from where he leaned against the lab wall. Loki was already on the carrier, and the enemy they were tracking had shifted to Corvus Glaive. With that in mind, Tony's concern was reasonable. Oh, thanks for the reminder. Tony pulled out his phone. I'll have Stark Tower's employees take the day off. He dismissed the staff as a precaution. Better to evacuate civilians than to risk them in a possible strike. Noah turned back to his console. He had been trying to sense fluctuations in the Tesseract's field. If Corvus used the Tesseract to teleport near Stark Tower, those spatial disturbances might be detectable. Testing complete, Noah said at last. Now we can try to pinpoint the enemy's location. Chapter 179, Discovery. Lysandra, how are the preparations coming along? The nano-robots are on standby at the base, ready for combat at a moment's notice, and Beast has been unleashed. Lysandra's clear, magnetic voice echoed in Noah's ear. Noah had called to check the nano-robot army's readiness. Experiments on the Sky Carrier had just produced new results. They were already scanning Paris for the Tesseract's gamma signature and could discover Corvus Glaive's location at any time. And Gwen? Is she ready? Noah asked. He'd considered letting Gwen join the fight. She wasn't just pretty, she was a heroine, and Noah hoped that through this Chitauri invasion, she would learn the ways of combat in this world. Before they boarded the Sky Carrier, he'd asked Gwen what she thought. When she heard someone might invade Earth, she had practically leapt at the chance, asking where they were, as if she couldn't wait to rush in and snip them with her scissors. Noah had gently calmed her down, and now Gwen was eagerly adapting to her new life, this strange, beautiful world, and the family she'd found in Noah and Lysandra. There were so many things she hadn't seen, she wouldn't stand by and watch them destroyed. She's been itching for it for a while, Lysandra said with a smile. Gwen stood nearby, warming up by swinging a large pair of blue scissors. Her purple magic hat hovered around her like it had caught her excitement. I see. Noah had already seen the live feed Lysandra sent. He didn't need to worry. He glanced over at Banner and Shaweg, who were clustered around a screen and talking animatedly, and then said, Once the enemy appears, I'll open a teleport portal and bring you over. Okay, Noah. All right, bye-bye. Noah ended the call and turned to the restless scientists. What's going on? Banner and Shaweg were gathered around the monitor. Tony, having just finished his own work, was there too. We found them, Shaweg said excitedly. Noah looked at the screen. The device had picked up the Tesseract's gamma emissions, and Banner and the others had already marked the coordinates on a map. They're hiding in a place like this, Shaweg said, then grabbed a comm and reported the location to Director Fury. Nice, Tony said casually. We rush in, do a little bang bang bang, and problem solved. Don't celebrate yet, Stark. I suggest you go put on your suit, Noah warned, walking up to Tony. Tony was only in his regular clothes and the old Mark V6 armor. Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight's weapons could tear through that easily. Huh? Necessary? Tony asked, puzzled. Trust me, very necessary. Noah nodded. All right. I'll go change. Back in a bit. Tony wasn't about to argue. He valued his life. He left the lab to suit up. Banner joined Noah at the screen. What kind of suit is he going to put on? One of his new inventions? Something like that, Noah said. Come on, Banner. Let's see what Director Fury's plan is. Shaweg had already sent the coordinates to Fury, who would be moving now. On the bridge, Director Fury and Rogers were already hashing out an attack plan. Thor and Loki had received the call and hurried over. Thor had his hammer in hand, eager for a fight. Smash a few bad guys, then go find Jane. Loki, summoned by Odin and dragged along by Thor, looked indifferent, not even bothering to meet Fury's gaze. He had no desire to help these mortals. "Is everyone here?" Fury asked, scanning the gathered group, then noticed one absence. "Where's Stark?" "Director, Stark just flew off to change clothes," Coulson replied. "Change clothes?" Rogers frowned. He knew Tony was unreliable, more scatterbrained than his own father ever was, and didn't take the remark too seriously. Fury shrugged. "Don't worry about him. He'll be back when it matters." Once everyone had assembled, Fury laid out the operation. S.Shield's France branch had already blockaded the area around the subway station. "Captain, Natasha and Barton, you'll lead a team to infiltrate the station and seize the Tesseract when the opportunity arises." After issuing several tactical orders, Fury handed the mission to Rogers. "What about the hostages inside? They took people from the Research Institute." "Hostages," Fury considered. "Our primary objective is to recover the Tesseract. If we don't secure it, the cost will be far greater than those people." Everyone understood the implication. The Institute's staff had been deprioritized. To Fury, the Tesseract was the critical threat. He couldn't allow an alien weapon to remain in enemy hands. "We can't just abandon them," Rogers protested. The lives of those Midgardians mattered to him. "Don't worry," Thor said, stepping forward. "Those Midgardians are under Asgard's protection. If outsiders have taken them, it is my duty to bring them back unharmed. If you can, we'll be grateful." Fury glanced at Thor and then at Noah. "So what do you two intend to do?" Noah met Fury's eyes. He and Thor were outside Fury's direct command, and the director wanted to know their plan. Chapter 180, Arrival in France. "What are you all planning? Are you going to join Rogers and the others?" Fury asked. If these exceptionally powerful people could join Rogers' rescue team, the Tesseract would be manageable. "I'll go first. I'm faster, so you can take your time," Noah said, glancing at the mission list that hadn't refreshed, and deciding to go find Corvus Glaive and his group himself. "What?" Fury started to ask, but Noah had already gone, leaving Fury and the others stunned. "Hey, Noah, wait!" Seeing this, Thor grabbed Loki and chased after him. Fury rubbed his forehead, at a loss. He had no idea how to deal with these people. "Fury, let's move," Captain America said, his shield already on his back, ready to go. "All right, you can go." Just as they were about to leave the bridge, Thor, who had already rushed out, came rushing back. "Thor, why are you back?" Rogers asked, almost bumping into him. "Didn't Thor just run off after that swift wind swordsman?" Loki, nearby, couldn't resist gloating. He chased after him, couldn't even see the other guy's shadow, didn't know the way, and tried to play hero. Hilarious. Thor gave an awkward laugh. Loki, beside him, was crackling with mischief. Everyone glanced at Thor, who looked embarrassed and flustered. They wanted to laugh, but out of respect they held it in. "Cough. Do you have a map?" Noah rushed off without waiting for me. Thor said after a couple of dry coughs. "A map won't be that helpful. Why don't you come with us? Noah's already ahead. If you take off now, it'll be the same," Rogers suggested. Thor thought about it and agreed. With Noah's speed, he might have already cleared the area. It made sense to go with them. He also wanted to ask the agent called Black Widow some questions about making human women happy. He'd asked Coulson about it before, and Coulson had told him to ask Black Widow, calling her a master in that area. Thor planned to have an in-depth discussion with her later. Everyone boarded the Quinjet bound for the abandoned subway station in Paris. One Quinjet couldn't carry them all, so they split into three. Fury, Coulson, and some S.H. SHIELD agents took one. Thor, Loki, Black Widow, and another group of agents took the second. Captain America, Hawkeye, and the remaining team took the third. Thor's insistence on riding with Black Widow made a few people wonder if he was planning to transfer his affections. Quinjet in flight. After saying he would go alone, Noah flew out of the sky carrier, accelerated to get outside its detection range, and opened a teleportation portal to Paris. In less than a few seconds, he went from above New York to French airspace, far faster than Thor could track, which was why Thor hadn't seen Noah's shadow. "There it is." Noah looked down. Below was an old, dilapidated building. the sealed entrance to the abandoned subway. Thick chains locked the main gate, so Corvus Glaive and his group probably hadn't entered from here. The area around the entrance was populated, residents nearby, pedestrians hurrying along the street. Noah remained in stealth. From his perception, he detected many human presences below, along the stairwell into the station. Those had to be Corvus Glaive's captives. I can go in. After surveying the surroundings and the underground layout, Noah prepared to activate Ghost Step and slip through the ground into the subway. Just as he was about to move, an energy fluctuation rose from below. Noah paused. What's that? He frowned at the familiar signature. He didn't dwell on it long, though, and accelerated into the ground. With Ghost Step active, the hard concrete seemed to give way like water. There was no resistance. When Noah stopped, he wasn't on a decrepit platform, but in what looked like a makeshift laboratory. Equipment from a research institute had been neatly arranged across the platform, and people in white coats, the missing researchers, stood under the influence of a strange force. Noah felt an odd aura clinging to their souls, the touch of the Mind Stone. What caught him most, however, was the device in the center of the lab, still humming with residual power. The familiar energy Noah had picked up outside was coming from the Tesseract. Moments before Noah arrived, Corvus Glaive and his team had used that device to perform another spatial jump. How did I miss them again? Noah muttered, staring at the device as its rotation slowed. He deactivated stealth and stepped onto the platform. The controlled people immediately noticed him. It's the swift-wind swordsman, the master's enemy, someone shouted. Corvus Glaive had taken the Institute's researchers and the security personnel as well, bringing them all here under his control. The armed guards, still under control, raised their weapons and opened fire on Noah. Bullets hammered into his chest armor and helmet, but not a scratch appeared. Noah scanned the crowd, confirmed they were all human, and raised a hand. He released a wave of magic that pinned everyone to the ground. The soldiers who had been glaring moments before went rigid under the immense pressure. Noah moved among them, checking each person. In the movie, Hawkeye was restored to normal by Black Widow's physical therapy, but to be safe, Noah took out Michael's blessing and performed a spiritual purification on everyone lying on the floor, ensuring there would be no lingering control or hidden dangers.